Well, everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Development Hell podcast. And this is the Movie Club, and we're here to talk about another movie this month. And just in time for the 4th of July, we went Canadian, eh? And are talking about Goon from director Michael Dowse and co-written by Jay Baruchel and Evan Goldberg. And this film focuses on Sean William Scott, who plays, not the brightest tool in the shed, but he's a really nice guy with a mean hook. And he becomes an enforcer on a minor league hockey team and just trying to prove it to himself. And an inevitable collision with the other enforcer, Liev Schreiber's character, on Ross the Boss. But it's just Kevin, it's Joe, and it's Shane for this particular episode. And this is actually Joe's pick. So, Joe, I'm going to let you go first. What's your history with Goon, and what were your general thoughts?
So the reason why I went with this pick was actually I know the episode's going to come out later in July, but as we're recording this, it is the last day, or it's like the Stanley Cup Finals. It's most likely going to be the last day because the Panthers have got like a super big lead. I've watched hockey. I watched sports growing up in Staten Island. I've watched baseball. I think I mentioned it on the 42 podcast too. I grew up watching the Yankees. And surprisingly, the Rangers were pretty prevalent too. They just came off of the Stanley Cup at the time, and they acquired Wayne Gretzky at the time when I was a kid. And then I moved to New Jersey and got mercifully picked on by a bunch of Devils fans.
That's funny because when I did watch hockey as a kid, I was a Devils fan and
Yeah.
merciless. I got so much shit from Flyers fans because I grew up with Kevin in South Jersey, so it's all Philly sports country.
It's so interesting our tri-state area when it comes to sports, and we could probably talk about that later. But
Yeah.
like, bottom line, I reconnected with it, and at the time too, I wanted to, get back into it because I was really into it as a kid. I was watching the games, and watching the movies. Loved Mighty Ducks franchise as a kid, so I wanted to get back into that, and I watched Goon, actually last year, and for some reason, like it's one of those movies that was like um, cult following, right?
Yep.
Where like people would talk about it in inner circles, and to me, it just seems surprising because it has a good cast, and it
Mm.
also has really good talent. Like we're going off of like Jay Baruchel and Evan Goldberg, guys who normally write with Seth Rogen and that company, right? Um, and it's so small, and it also made me realize that where they were going for it's touching on something that you don't see in a lot of sports. Like with hockey, the enforcer role is really specific. Like one of the
Mm.
beauties of hockey is the fact that you've got a sport that's basically could easily be played without adding the equivalent of putting people on skates. And a lot of collisions happen. So a lot of the times they have to have like an enforcer come in there to kind of protect their forwards. So it's very specific to that culture, and I feel like this movie kind of gives a glimpse into that, while also incorporating things we like about certain sports cliches, which is it has like the elements of Rocky, and it has like a character like Doug, who is played by Sean William Scott, very very humble. It just one of those guys that doesn't know what his calling is. That when he finds out in his life like what his calling is, it makes sense, right? It may not be the profession that most people want, as we'll probably talk about with his dad character, who's really straight up a
Oh,
dick,
yeah.
very unlikable. um, but it's one of those things where it's like I watched it the first time, and then I actually pretty sure I've watched this movie like 4 times since I first watched it. It's just one of those movies that's just like it just kind of stuck with me.
Absolutely. How about you, Kevin?
Yeah, so I'm not much of a sports fan at all, let alone hockey. Uh, but it's funny you bring up Rocky, Joe, because my first impression after watching this is hockey Rocky in a way.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
was a delight, I thought. I didn't even know what to expect going into it. I had had this movie recommended to me before. I knew all I knew about it is that it was a hockey movie. I knew nothing else, and up to today, uh, I knew nothing about the plot. But I came away from it feeling this was very warm. Um, by the end of the movie, Doug's got a pretty good friend support group, and that was really the main focus of the movie, and I like that. It was great.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, I used to watch hockey when I was a kid. Really haven't watched hockey regularly, much more of a big baseball fan, football fan, but I was a Devils fan when I was a kid, and we don't have many Jersey teams anymore. Seeing as they stole the Nets and sent them to Brooklyn. And most of the time, most people just root for Philly or New York teams anyway in New Jersey. But there's a pride in hockey that there is actually a New Jersey team to root for. And also they're the coolest. They're the Devils. But this film, I think I watched this for the first time in grad school on VOD, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, you know what? This must have been one of my Netflix DVDs because I had the Netflix DVD service for a while there. I stopped it during
Back in
COVID.
those days.
Um, but I watched this and I thought this was hilarious. I thought it was heartwarming. So, see, I grew up probably not for the best watching American Pie because I was probably like
Didn't we
12 or
all?
13 watching that for the first time, thanks to my cousin Chris and my brother for showing those to me. So like I knew Stifler. Sean William Scott was Stifler. And like a kind of similar character in like role models, not as much of a dick, but he's still a dick. But this shows some range. Like Sean William Scott is a humble, sweet, endearing idiot. And he knows it. He is fully aware. Like the running gag of him just being like, somebody is like, I'll see you out there. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna see you out there. And just repeat everything. He is 100% the kind of person that would say, enjoy your movie. I hope you enjoy your movie too, to the attendant at a movie theater, which they will not. They won't be watching a movie that day.
Right.
It's one of those kinds of things where it's like he's so endearing and fun. This certainly has tons of sports movie tropes in it.
Yeah.
But damn, so I watched this years ago at this point, and then I've watched it twice in the past 2 weeks. And this is the kind of movie, it's 90 minutes, it's funny, it has like there's some blood, like there's some brutality here, and the way that Dowles shoots the action is so visceral. And I have to say, this has one of the best sports movie finales ever.
Totally.
Just that fight between Doug and Ross the boss was the best. The music, the swelling, like classical, like operatic music, and it just fits so well. And it was perfect. I I remember rewatching this like 2 weeks ago before I watched it with Kevin today, getting ready to just like get up when all the fans did when they leave the penalty boxes, and you're like, you're gonna throw down. Um, and this builds up to that. I like the romance. I think Allison Pill's very charismatic. Ava, things are complicated, obviously, but it's a simple kind of idea that like she's sleeping around. She drinks a lot, but he brings out the best in her and makes her want to be with him, and it's really nice and sweet. And yeah, Eugene Levy goes from being the best dad in the world in American Pie with Sean William Scott to being the biggest dick dad in the world in this one. What a jerk.
Yeah.
And also, one of the funniest moments in this movie where he's just like, dumb, gay, dumb,
I'm dumb. He's
gay. I'm dumb. He's gay. And having that moment, which that's the thing, like this family obviously values intelligence, and that's just not
prestige.
there.
Yeah, prestige,
Yeah,
like what they look like the whole thing with in the synagogue where he's greeting his family and he's talking about his best friend who turns out being his lover. his brother,
They're
obviously.
just really great friends, and then they start kissing each other.
And
And
then
then
he mentioned like, oh, they're adopted, by the way, which already kind of cements just how much of an asshole he is.
yeah,
Um, and,
I do
and
love.
also, yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
I was
right
gonna
off the
say like it
bat.
also really emphasizes how much like Doug does care about people. Like the whole
Yes.
reason why he became an enforcer during that small game was because the guy called him gay, and he's like, my brother's gay, and that's what
Yep.
started that whole fight.
I liked that way to kick that off.
Yeah,
Well, and that's the thing. Like he was also defending his friend, which also Jay Baruchel is a douche in this movie.
he's from
He's
Boston.
Yeah.
he's funny, but he's so much,
Oh
like
my gosh.
so much in this movie, and he's probably one of the one. And like I like a lot of the teammate characters. I think his dynamic with uh LaFlemme, I think is really interesting in how that develops through the film.
Yeah.
I just feel like a couple of the players, like the what were they, Russians? Like that's so weird. The
Oh, they
two
may have been Swedish.
brothers,
Yeah.
sweet. Oh my God. The
Finnish, yeah.
two brothers were so weird. And like that's the thing. You can definitely tell where maybe some of like the cringe comedy elements come in. It's definitely through Jay Baruchel's character and with those two brothers. And like
Yeah.
that didn't quite work for me, but a lot of the humor did. Like this is a
Yeah.
legitimately hilarious movie, and Sean William Scott is so funny in this reserved performance, and he's in a show called Welcome to Flack, I think it is. And it's very much like this is a TV show, sitcom that's come out of like the world of Parks and Rec and The Office. And he plays a preacher in a small town, and he's
Huh.
like he's kind and care, and it's like that kind of character, which is fun. And he just it's really nice seeing him play a different kind of character than Stifler, because like I guess the 12 years up to this movie, like that's what he was known for, was
Mhm.
being a dick.
Mhm.
And this movie allowed him to get to do something different.
Yeah.
Was this before or after he was Country Mac?
I think after. I think
Okay.
before.
Before.
Rest in peace, Country Mac, down the toilet.
Oh my
Another very
God.
different character from Stifler.
Fantastic. He's just so cool. He rides around his motorcycle. You want to be part of the gang? Yeah, why not?
Also, Liev Schreiber, Ross the Boss Rhea. My God, that goatee mullet combo. Like I was just thinking Barry Melrose all over that. Because like I remember seeing him on like ESPN and stuff like that. It's just like that goatee mullet combo is so hockey,
So
especially the
Jaromir
mullet.
Yager, right? Like
Oh my
from Goon.
God.
Yeah.
And like it's funny because not only did I rewatch Goon today with Kevin, I basically watched all of season 3 of Shoresy because I had a streaming link for it. And it just has that vibe. And I guess I was just really in a hockey mood this weekend. And it's just that kind of hockey players are a very specific thing, and hockey is a very specific thing. Like you don't have enforced like it's taboo in baseball to have people that are like headhunters and stuff like that. Like 30 plus years ago, that was normal. Like you would have the guy who would beam somebody if you needed to take somebody out or teach them a lesson. But like that doesn't happen in today's game. And football, there's so many more rules now. Like you can barely tackle somebody without
Yeah.
getting called for some kind of penalty.
Yeah.
Hockey, it's like that special place where you could just, have a drop the gloves and just beat the shit out of each other, fight on the ice. And that's what makes it so perfect. And I just love that dynamic of you have Rhea who's on the end. And Leaf Schreiber plays his character so well. They have that little diner interaction where it's really like, hey, they'll chew you up and spit you out. Like once you run your course, they don't really care about you. And he's like that last game where he's just trying to egg Doug on the whole game, beating the shit out of people. And I'm just like, oh, and playing the mind games where he was like getting ready and then he drops the gloves, but he didn't drop the gloves and
What a
got
dick.
Doug to get a penalty. Because that whole dynamic, that cat and mouse thing, honestly, if I have to think about all the sports movies I watched, that last game of this movie was one of my favorite games in any sports movies.
Yeah.
And
And
like
it's
I'm
also a
not
good arc too for LaFlemme because LaFlemme being a
mhm,
guy that was spooked out by this guy and pretty
Oh
much gave
yeah.
up all hope on the
yeah.
sport. Because like really thinking about it, right? To be a first draft in the major leagues and to be dropped down to the minor leagues, that's humiliating, you know?
Mhm.
So to see him come out of that and having someone actually get his back and be able to score that natural hat trick, that's huge.
Oh, that moment felt so great with the music swelling, and it
Yeah,
just like
yeah, yeah.
felt so good.
That last game
Oh,
was good.
mhm. It just and getting back to like the romance part too, because like that works. Like Allison Pill, I think is a really underappreciated actress because like she had a small role in Scott Pilgrim. Like she's the drummer who's the Setch
Oh,
Bomb,
that's who
and
that is. Oh, wow.
like she has like a small role in Vice and Snowpiercer, and like she's popped up in a lot of stuff. And I just love, well, you know, she's kind of playing a stereotype here specifically. It's like, ooh, she's like the cool, edgy girl that like falls for the nice guy. But like, I don't know, it just really works in this scenario, and I think the two of them sell it so well.
I wouldn't even say edgy. I feel like she was pretty based in reality off of. There's a certain type of person
Mhm.
uh, that gets into the same habits that she does, and she embodied it pretty well. I
I
felt.
agree with you, Kevin. Like maybe it's almost like she got so used to this, right? That when a
She got
genuinely
used
nice
to it.
guy,
Yeah.
yeah, like when
Right.
a genuinely nice guy comes around, it changes
Yeah.
her world. Yeah.
Like she even said as much about her boyfriend. I think I forget the exact line, but she just said, I just don't love him. But she was obviously still with him.
And I think
Yeah,
it's
'cause
also kind of alluded to the fact that like maybe because he was so distant with his work and not really into the
mhm.
relationship, which is probably why she did
Yeah.
end up going into this rut. I do also want to say, just in general, when it speaks to Doug's character over the fact that like he feels so bad over the fact that when the boyfriend finds out, he goes to his house and have him beat him up. That's
That
like
was that was probably the funniest scene in the movie for
it's
me.
funny.
Like Doug just shows up and has this sad look on his face. Oh, I'm so sorry. And he's
I'm
like
so sorry.
Yeah.
just beating him.
I wanted to bring that scene up. Yeah.
It's so interesting.
I think one of my
It's
favorite like little lines was when he's talking on the phone with her, which he's so awkward. So
Oh my
awkward.
god.
But she's like, I'm trying to be good and like cut down on
Or
my
by drinking.
drinking. And she's
the
like
10 beer bottles
nine
around her. Yeah.
empty bottles around her feet. And just like, I don't think so. It's just their dynamic is so much fun. And like he shows up to the coffee meetup with like the the flowers, the gift. He's like, it's not really a stuffed
Yeah.
animal, it's just like the mascot for our team, and it's so
It's
sweet.
licensed.
And
It's
I
licensed.
love the way that he reacts to things. Like when uh he the moment where he walks out after she's like, "No, we're not a thing," and he just looks so sad, and then the trash just blows into his face, and then it cuts to her driving him home, and he's talking about
He's
another
talking about
team.
the garbage.
It's just like he's a special
Yeah.
human being for sure, and I just love this character. I'm glad that they made a sequel. Now I want to rewatch the sequel, which has Wyatt Russell in it,
Oh, really?
as the antagonist this time around.
Ooh.
Yeah, Doug
Yeah.
is a very, very honest character
Hmm.
To a fault. Like even when he's being interviewed, he's like, "Why do you
to a
go to the games?"
fault.
He's like,
Yeah.
"Well, I like the corn dogs." You just think with all these corn dogs.
I like corn dogs because what like you don't have to have it's a built-in bun. It's like the bun's like wrapped around the hot dog and it's on a stick. It's just like
Okay.
he's right. It's 100% correct. I have to be specific because I can't have corn dogs because I can't have corn. But
Mhm.
like Korean corn dogs are made with like rice flour and stuff like that. So I'm
Not
like,
bad.
yes, I could have it. But like, get
Rice
that. That's
dogs.
relatable. That's like 100% relatable. And there's just so many great moments in this. It's such a funny movie. And sure, there's some sophomoric kind of humor, like the whole calling
Oh,
up. It's just like
definitely.
you just like you like hot dogs, like the thing that led that. It's like, well, I'm sure you like dicks. And or the thing is like he called me up and told me I won. And this is what makes this joke so clever, is it is like dirty joke. I won 50 dicks to suck, and then asked me if I wanted one a day, or I wanted them all at
Suck
once.
them all at once or once a month for 50 months.
And just like, oh, that was a funny joke. Like that really worked. And that's the
And
thing.
it,
This is a funny movie. It
Yeah.
hits all the sports beats so well
yeah,
and has such a cathartic ending too. Damn, that when he nails that last punch and knocks out um Rhea, it's just so good. Except ugh, the goalie part where like his face gets beaten and they stomp on his ankle. Like I was just like, "Ugh, this is a lot."
it is a lot, but that's the sport too. Like I think one of the coolest contrasts is the fact that they showed the footage of the guy that it was inspired by, who played for a minor league, the ECHL. Not sure if you guys grew up with or knew about the Trenton Titans,
Mm,
but that was a local team that was in the ECHL and around our neck of the woods, up around Ryder, where they played at the Sun Center
yeah.
at the time. But like showing the footage of the actual guy getting, scoring a goal with his butt. That actually happens sometimes. Like even last year when I was watching the playoffs, this one guy got a goal off of the puck hitting the dude's face and then slapping it into the goal. Like that's just how the sport is. It's crazy.
A lot of the
It just
violent scenes were also the most funny scenes in this movie.
hmm
well,
hmm
that's the thing. The way that it was shot too was so visceral.
Yeah.
And also like when I think LaFlemme finally buys into Doug, where he has the guy by the shirt and is just like and just punching him off to the side with his own jersey was hilarious. And like he's making eye contact with LaFlemme and finally like breaks through. It was so good.
The crazy thing about that too, though, is like this year, it really speaks to like the parallels of the sport because this year the Rangers got a guy from the minor league called Matt Rempe, and everybody compared it to Goon. Like everybody saw him as being like Doug because he would look to the
Mhm,
box, be like, "Am I ready to fight? Do I go?" He's usually put out there to like make sure he's sticking up. He's also doing like
mhm.
and he's 6'8" without skates, so he's 7 foot, muscle bound dude on skates. So like nobody can hit him, nobody can really attack him. But like it kind of speaks to just the nature of it, which I wanted to bring this up too because Jay Baruchel is such a hockey nerd. Like I didn't realize that until after seeing the movie, but he wrote a book about the Montreal Canadiens.
Nice.
When it comes to like his extensive knowledge about enforcers, but also the team because he's like a super diehard Montreal Canadiens fan. Um, it's very possible that like his insight is definitely what's there. Maybe the sophomore comedy
Yeah.
is Evan Goldberg's type of thing, maybe to just kind of like keep it together. But also at the same time too, like Jay's character, kind of unlike what he usually plays as. To
Yeah.
me, it often feel like self
A lot
insert,
more extreme,
especially
yeah.
yeah, like more reserved, but like he had that one line at the end that always bothered me where he's like, "Oh, I'm the witty wisecrack character." I'm like, "He that's too much self-insert right there, You could have maybe written a different line as opposed to calling yourself the
Oh
wisecracking
yeah,
best
when he
friend."
has the camera and he's talking to him and he calls him, like, oh crap, they're starting,
Yeah,
and like
that
turns
part
the
I loved.
camera.
It's like, "Oh crap, they're fighting," and then it comes back into the fight.
Yeah,
That's funny. But I was like, it always rubbed me the wrong way that he calls himself the wisecracking best friend. I was like, no one says that.
It fits into the douchiness of his character, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It
Yeah.
does.
Well,
It
and
does
he's
emphasize that.
so much like a dude from the internet. Like
A little bit
being a
before some of this stuff was common too.
yeah,
He's the
and
subreddit of hockey on Reddit. He's the
Yeah.
subreddit of hockey. He is
the embodiment of a Reddit subreddit on hockey. I can
one hundred
definitely
percent.
see that
Like he even
100%.
moderates that whole thing he does, like his own website. He totally is.
Oh yeah.
But overall, this is just such a fun movie, and like we don't do a ton of like fun movies on the movie club because we're serious cinephiles. But no, like it's fun sometimes to just be able to talk about a movie like Goon, which is so much fun, has so much heart. This
It's
is our
got a lot
second,
of heart.
It
yeah,
does.
so much heart. And this is another sports movie that we got to do. The other one was much more serious because
Yeah.
it was Jackie Robinson. But like I feel like hockey with like the attitude of it definitely opens it up for sports comedies.
Yeah.
Like they're just
Yeah.
weird dudes
Yeah.
playing hockey, like for sure. And like I've seen Miracle, which is like super serious, inspirational kind of hockey movie, but you got slapstick, you got all the
Even
Mighty
Mighty
Ducks,
Ducks.
the Mighty Ducks, Knuckle Puck Time, Fashion Brothers, and like all those kinds of things. This is a fun time, and yeah, now I really want to rewatch the second one.
I like the
Um,
scene where he calls Eva and she's like crying and he goes, "Oh, what happened? Did you just watch Rudy?" That was probably the best
um,
line in the movie for me.
so good. But do either of you have any other thoughts that we want to add here about Goon?
Well,
Yeah, do you guys want to talk about the parents at all? The dad?
That
I was
was
upset by them.
I was. It's also interesting too because like it also shows just how bad they are when they don't show up at
Yeah.
the last game, but how good that the brother is able to
mhm,
stick up for his own brother. Like to me,
yeah,
that's the
Yeah.
strength of that because they do in moments have brotherly bond to each other.
mhm,
That part I kind of wish I would see more of that, but for the sake of the story, it makes sense why you
Yeah.
didn't see that. But like when it comes to the parents, it's like what I said before. It's all about prestige. It's all about image, right? Where they just don't want to admit that what makes them happy they should really be following what makes them happy. Like on one hand, I could kind of see why the dad is against it in the sense that like the concussions and the physical injury that can come
mhm,
from
Oh,
being an
for sure.
enforcer, that makes sense. But that's not the point. It's about you're embarrassing me. When you
yeah,
go out there, it's about my name and them shouting my name, where it's more narcissistic as opposed to him actually celebrating his son's achievement in
Yeah,
playing.
and I was thinking like I understand the reasoning behind it in a way, but also he didn't seem to have an objection to it
Right.
before when he was doing other jobs where he
Yeah.
was at equal risk, if
Yeah.
not more.
yeah. Well, and that was such a horrible dig that last. Like your jersey might as well say security on it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
He got a
and
winning
just like
puck. That's like he gave him a winning puck. No one ever
that
gets a
was
winning puck.
that was so awkward and sad when he's holding the puck up and he just would not grab it. And that moment really, like, obviously Eugene Levy's character is outwardly dismissive, but like when the mom wouldn't even take the puck, I'm just like, you're just this bad woman. Why would you do this to your child?
Yeah, that
And
scene was very good at letting us see the dynamic of their whole family.
yeah,
And
Mhm.
I mean, just like we don't see too much more of Doug and his brother, like you said, Joe. We also don't
yeah.
see another side of his parents really, other than the bad side of them.
Hmm.
Because I did get the impression that Doug really loves his family, like his parents
Yep.
included. He's very disappointed in their lack of support for him, though. Clearly,
Yeah.
he did a
Mhm.
It,
good job showing it.
right. It also shows too in his respect for people and why he does what he does. It's because like it's the whole thing with him not walking across the logo, him being an enforcer so that he's protecting the other teammates.
Right.
He
Mhm.
really cares about people, even if they're not showing him that same level of respect. That's just the type of person he is, and
Yeah,
It's
it's a
admirable.
very respectable quality to put in your main character.
100%,
Yeah,
100%. But it's also sad too because when it comes to like the psychological aspects of people pleasing and what it can
yeah,
lead to,
exactly. Like letting
that
the guy
that
beat
that
them
has
up.
implications, but we won't go into that.
Right.
One thing I do also want to add that I feel like it's kind of what we said about how sometimes we don't watch, we're mostly watching serious movies, and that's understandable. To me, I also feel like with Movie Club, it's like the last scene from Ratatouille when it comes to what the critic says about sometimes the most common thing can really show how powerful, and sometimes there's a fear
Mhm.
of showing the unknown, and sometimes it's hard for being an artist when it comes to celebrating the new. Goon is like, it's so weird because Goon could easily have been like one of those movies that we grew up with, like Borat or Napoleon Dynamite, where you go to school and everybody's quoting it, or everybody's talking about that one scene where he hits a goal off his ass, right? Like, I
Yeah.
feel like it could have easily been like one of those movies. But for some reason, maybe because of its limited release, or maybe the fact that, you know, I don't think it, I mean, it didn't seem like it was marketed. Like it was that is low where it didn't
Mhm.
seem like most people really knew about it outside of word of mouth. Um, it's just interesting because it's up there, right? When it comes to like the Evan Goldberg type comedies, like when it comes to Pineapple Express, where this is the end. Like
Mhm.
knowing that this movie came out in between those movies and it almost feels like a footnote to me,
Yeah.
it feels kind of cringy in a way where it's like I would love to see that movie be up there and talked about as much as like the other, Evan Goldberg comedies. Like
Definitely feel like it got overlooked.
it
Yeah.
I hadn't
seriously.
even heard of it until about a month or two ago. Now I was shocked when you recommended it. I was like, I just heard about that movie not too long ago.
Fortuitous. It's one of those kinds of things. This is much more super bad than it is Pineapple Express,
Yeah.
and this is the end. Because like this is legitimately a story about people and going through something, finding some romance in life, and finding purpose. And there's a lot of heart there. It's not like a crazy stoner comedy like Pineapple Express life. And this is the end is insane from start to finish and just ridiculous. This has so much heart. It's so funny. It's endearing. It's one of those kinds of films that you get. Like does kind of give me the Napoleon Dynamite vibes.
Does.
Like it's
Yeah, that's a good
uh
comparison.
it's a person that is not in the not cool, not successful, but like is finding something. And this certainly had all the elements to be like that cult classic thing. But yeah, I think this went pretty much straight to VOD at one point, and it didn't get a big release, and I'm sure not a lot of people saw it, which is a shame. And also, I don't know if it being a hockey movie might have turned people off. It's like, well, I don't watch hockey. And hockey is the least popular of the big four sports in the United States, specifically. So, like, I don't know. But I'm glad we watched it. We got to talk about it, and hopefully all you out there go check out Goon. Well, I feel like that's a good place to end in terms of like just stuck that landing.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
welcome.
it was good. I
We'll
go
be
watch
back next month for another episode of the Development Hell podcast with the movie club. Maybe we'll have some of our more of our friends back for next time, but this was a fun time with just the three of us chatting some goon. But Kevin and Joe, and from Shane, thank you as always for tuning in and always supporting the Development Hell podcast.